Well, in the previous session, I was telling you what the situation was when the poem starts. The poem is my last Duchess, and the situation is that the Duke is visited by a messenger from the neighboring count, and the Duke takes that messenger on a visit around the palace, where he takes him to an art gallery, and we come to know that the Duke is very fond of fine arts. There in the art gallery there is a portrait, and the portrait is of the late wife of the Duke. Then the Duke starts explaining to the messenger what kind of duchess his wife was, and this is how the poem starts, and this is how we come to know about the Duchess. I told you in the previous session that there is an inquiring look in the eyes of the messenger, and to that the Duke replies and explains what kind of woman his wife was. The messenger is especially worried about the deep look, or is anxious, is inquisitive, is found to know about the deep look in the eyes of the portrait. And in that, we come to know that the Duke understands that he would have to explain to the messenger the reason behind that look, and this is how he starts. He tells that the deep look in the eyes of the portrait of the Duchess is not because of any guilty love, or is not because of any sex intrigue, or is not because of any affair that the Duchess had, because he says that he never gave a chance or any opportunity to her to be disloyal to him. Even the portrait that was made, it was not made by an ordinary artist, it was made by a monk. Why did he choose the monk for the portrait? Because the monks are clergymen, and they are not allowed to develop a physical relationship or sex relationship or any extra marital relationship with women. They are not even allowed to marry. And that is why he thought that it would be safe to ask a monk to make a portrait of his wife. And that's how he wants to explain to us that he never gave a chance, he never gave an opportunity to his wife to be unfaithful to him. And even that portrait was made by a monk, and when it was made by a monk, he did not allow the monk to spend more than one day on that portrait. So that again shows how he was jealous, and how he was a person who could not trust his wife, because he did not allow the monk any time longer than a day, because he did not want to provide any opportunity to his wife and the monk to be close to one another. That's why we say that this shows how jealous the Duke was, and also how strict he was, how tyrant he was. And it also shows how the Duchess, the poor Duchess, could not enjoy any freedom of movement when he was the wife of such a brutal man. The Duke also tells the messenger that his wife had very childish and foolish habits. She was pleased with trifles, with things which were very common, or with small things, with trivial things, and she would thank other people even for the slightest favor they offered her, and had no sense of decorum or manners. And then he also gives examples that, for example, the slight blush of joy on her cheek and her neck was not only caused by the presence of her husband, but also if someone mentioned that her cloak covered her wrist too much, that she should uncover the wrist. For example, the painter had asked because the painter had to paint or to make the portrait, or um, even if the painter or the artist or the monk that was making the portrait, even if he said that the paint that he was using was not able to capture the light pink glow in the skin of her or the skin of the Duchess, the Duchess would take it as compliment and would blush with pleasure. The Duke tells that it was very childish. All this was childish, right? And it was childish because the Duchess would be even pleased or would be even blushed too easily by, for example, if someone offered cherries, or if she saw a beautiful sunset, or if someone gave any other present, she would be overjoyed. She would blush with pleasure. And the Duke, that's why, thinks that it was very unbefitting for a Duchess to to give such responses, because he believed that she was the wife of a duke, and being the wife of a duke demands certain decorums, especially when he boasts about his ancestors and tells that his family is an ancient family, such an old family that has been recorded, the lineage of which is recorded for 9 years, 900 years, 9 centuries. But the Duke complains that instead of behaving like a duchess, she would take every small thing as a cause of pleasure, which he did not like. There are many other things that he tells, and he also tells about why he did not correct his wife. He explains that he did not want to correct his wife because it would it would be against his dignity, or maybe she would start arguing with him. So, for the fear of this, he never corrected his wife, never wanted to tell his wife that she should behave, or that she should do certain things and avoid certain other things. Well, the Duke, in this way, is revealing his character, his own character, what kind of man he was. He was a person who was very cruel, he was a person who was very strict, he was a tyrant, he was a person who was very much jealous. He was a person who could not trust his wife. He was a person who was greedy and cunning, because in the next lines he tells the messenger that he expects a very handsome dowry from his master or from the duke of the other count when he would marry his daughter. This shows how greedy he was. And also, he tells it very masterly to the messenger, which again shows, so reflects that he is a man who is very cunning in telling or in conveying his message to others. Well, there are such pieces that we come to know about the Duke, and we also come to know about the Duchess. That the Duchess is an innocent lady, and she had no freedom under this cruel man, and blah blah blah. Let us read the poem, and then we decide it for ourselves what kind of poem it is and what dramatic monologue is, and the technique of dramatic monologue, and the characters of these two people, especially the Duchess. In your book that you have had from me, it is the page number 373. My last Duchess. Ferrara, I have told you, Ferrara is the place, is a city in Italy, and this is because the place is Ferrara. That's why it's written here. The poem starts with the words, "That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now." Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. "Wilt please you sit and look at her?" I said, "Frau Pandolf, by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me if they durst, how such a glance came there, so not the first are you to turn and ask thus, so 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek, into the Duchess' cheek, perhaps. Fra Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, it was all one, my favour at her breast, that dropping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked man good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift who would stoop to blame this sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an un, and say just this or that in you disgusts me here you miss. You would have noticed when I was reading this previous line, I did not use the word one as is generally pronounced. I pronounced it as un because there is an before it. When the article an comes, it means that the next word will be with a vowel sound. And when it is with a vowel sound, it would be pronounced not one but un. And that is because the poets have the poetic license to use such words, and when they use such words, we are bound to pronounce them the way they are used by the poets. Or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to use, forsooth, and made excuse, even then would some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whenever I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. There she stands, as if alive. Will't please you rise? We'll meet the company below. Then I repeat, the count your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. Nay, we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though taming a seahorse thought a rarity, which claws of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. The poem is, well, the formal analysis of the poem is a secondary thing. First, we shall explain the poem word to word, and then we shall go to the next phase of it, which is formal explanation and other connotations. We stop it here. The session is about to end, and we meet in the next session and then take a look at the poem closely. Thank you.